Live, this is One for the Record. I'm Diana, and today is April 4th, 2013. Not a lot of news tonight, but here we go. The Watchers watching the world. Okay, WMO dubbed last year as disturbing sign of climate change. The World Meteorological Organization revealed in a statement on the status of the global climate that during the August to September 2012 melting season, the Arctic sea ice covered was just 3.4 million square meters. Wow. Uh-oh, heads up. Last year, 2013. A continuous low-level eruption recorded at Cleveland Volcano on Aleutian Islands. Is Comet Ison just an ordinary comet? Also, massive tornadoes leave trail of destruction in Italy. Also, new activity at Mount Cleveland Volcano on Aleutian Islands. Alrighty then, moving on. Got to do this fast for you guys. Alright, next up. We'll go to the E&E News, because all there is one thing under Fukushima, Japan. Extremely radioactive rubble found on top of Fukushima Reactor 3. Wow, imagine that. Alright, moving on. Here we go. Extinction Protocol 2012 and beyond. A tale of fire and ice. California wildfires, 28,000 acres burned in Ventura County. China reports 27th death from H7N9. 40 die in meningitis outbreak in Guinea. Alrighty then. That is the news for tonight. Stay tuned. I'm attaching Dr. Deagle from Thursday. Alright, well, Dr. McKinney, take care, and I'll see you again on the flip side. Be safe. I got your backs. Be prepared for anything.
Another thing, the National Weather Service, all of the storms that we're seeing right now for the last 6 weeks about this horrendous set of storms moving through the U.S. right now, there's another two. There's a hurricane that was trying to form in the Gulf. I haven't seen the status in the last 6 hours, but we are now connecting into Saturn electrically. We have been for weeks, and this is going to go on for weeks. So what I'm saying is Comet Ison, we could have weeks, even months of solar conditions affecting Earth, not just a single one event that would happen as it, say, passes by the sun on November 26th or some given date.
You mentioned also that NASA is even presenting the report that we're going to have dust come from the comet tail that'll strike us twice as it heads inbound and outbound. The outbound dust to hit about mid-January 2014.
Yeah, and that there again, and that, we talked about this before, that NASA is shadowing everything I do. I made the prediction because of that date, and I made that prediction because the new moon passing, it's 2 days after new moon, in January 2014 is the trigger mechanism, and the electrical alignment is such that we have Jupiter, Comet Ison, Earth's new moon passing that 2 days after new moon, and Venus all aligning. And so I said we could see some fine dust coming in, specifically sulfur dioxide and some other chemicals that are common around the orbit of Jupiter and between Earth and Mars coming in, and we could connect into that. So what does NASA do? They come out and say this special only fine dust meteor stream is computer modeled to shoot at Earth and intersect with Earth on January 14th, January 12th of 2014. And by the way, it's supposed to come around the sun with the comet, and another special beam is going to come right at Earth, and they're going to crisscross on Earth on that given date. Now, the probability of such a fantastically remote scenario happening is just, it's like saying the sun's going to be here and it's going to pop over there, and then the moon is going to flip over there. It's absurd. It's fairy tale science, but they're allowing this to go on because they have to try and overshadow my predictions with some kind of fairy tale science so they can say that they knew about this. But the real result is that January 12th to 14th time frame, and it could start as early as the 8th of January, 2014, we're going to have some serious weather. We could see some connections electrically, some auroral activity. By the way, along with that fairy tale science at NASA, is that it could cause upper atmospheric luminosity of clouds. So they're trying to get all of my predictions in under this one umbrella of some guy who's a meteor specialist making this prediction on a computer. And like I say, the one stream has to follow the comet around the sun and then come directly at Earth. So how they come up with this stuff is just beyond bizarre. It's really, really, at best, fairy tale science. By the way, no comet has ever done this before. There's never been any reason to believe that any comet would ever do it in the future. So why Comet Ison? It's laughable what's going on here.
Exactly. There's inconsistent information, and they're not keeping their story straight at NASA, are they?
No, and by the way, remember a couple weeks ago, we were talking about the official size of Comet Ison nucleus was 5 kilometers, and I pointed out that Comet Halley's nucleus is 7 kilometers. Comet Hale-Bopp, which was a medium-sized comet, they said was 42 kilometers, and now they've downgraded the size of this comet nucleus to 2 kilometers, but it's supposed to be the comet of the century. You know, they're just all over the place. They can't keep their story straight, and the story gets more and more bizarre all the time.
How would you tell people to prepare for what's coming? Because there's no absolutes now, but there's a scientific potential for a major blackout for crop failures. And the probability, if there's an Earth-centric CME, we could have a Carrington-style event, which I think is the most probable event to happen, along with the danger of an airborne plague of swine avian flu. Back in a moment with Professor James McCanney. Stay tuned. JMCCSCI.com is the website.
I remember when.
Back.
It sounded like she was reading a script.
Yeah. Welcome back, Professor McCanney. You had made a comment on the break about a lady that called into the Alex Jones show and mentioned about the danger of the Ison comet triggering off a coronal mass ejection. We have to realize that things such as an avian pandemic from H7N9, this very grave danger that if it is an Earth-centric CME, which is, again, remember, it's my analysis from all the data that I've read and all your work, which I think is the most brilliant on this in the electric universe, that the major CMEs, including the one called the Carrington event of 1859, was most probably triggered by a comet, cometary passage in the inner solar system. The fact that this is happening, we don't have an exact prediction to say with 16 times brighter than the moon, which means it's no little tiny comet. This is a big sucker comet. This is a monster. And if it does have effects at action at a distance or triggering off a CME or volcanic or earthquake activity or superstorms, we're going to have a rough ride, aren't we?
Here's the situation, and let's start with what's going on right now. For a couple of weeks, about 2.5 weeks, I've been monitoring the United States. The weather conditions, and one thing is the upper level weather conditions are tremendous weather conditions, but on the low level, we have had low level cloud cover for 2.5 weeks, something that's totally unprecedented. And so the point is that I believe this has been manipulated so that people cannot see Comet Lemon. It's also an experiment. By the way, Comet Lemon is a comet that's very visible in the early morning sky. The comet called Comet Ison is going to be visible in the morning sky starting next September, and so and it's going to come within 7 million miles of Mars, which means it could envelope Mars in its comet tail. And so I think what's going on right now is they're experimenting with keeping the cloud cover over the entire United States so nobody can see this. The issue of a comet coming that close to a planet, an inner solar system planet, we have not seen this in 3,000 years. The ancients talk about large comets coming near Mars and having major effects on the planet Mars. Alleviating Mars. Mars used to be a blue planet, we are told, by the ancients. Right. And so the point is that NASA is not reporting this. In all of the reporting that NASA is doing about Comet ISON, they start in November. Well, the biggest event in the last 3,000 years is happening in September and the 1st of October. It's going to come within 7 million miles of Mars. It'll be visible in the early morning sky, a moonless sky. Mars is a naked eye visible planet. The comet will be large at that point, and for weeks leading up to that, we could be seeing interplanetary electrical discharges, mind you. So yeah. I think right now we are in experimental phase where they're locking down the country weather-wise so that nobody can see this.
Right. In other words, even with a telescope, even with just binoculars or a visible eye, you're going to see an incredibly large comet naked to the visible eye, literally grazing Mars and producing interplanetary discharges of plasma across space that could trigger off major problems on Mars, but it can also trigger off the CME from the sun, and it could cause extreme weather even at a distance to Earth, even though we're not going to pass anywhere near more than, I think it's 55 million miles from Comet ISON.
Yeah, and so the next thing is that even though that's going to be a long distance from Earth, we could have electrical interactions from that comet simply because of its electrical alignment with Jupiter and Venus.
Right. In other words, it creates a plasma bridge between large planets like Jupiter and Venus, and as a result, you can get interplanetary discharges of plasma that can have dramatic effects in our ionosphere, and the activation of plasma discharges from the ionosphere to the Earth, the tectonic plates that trigger off earthquakes. This is, in fact, how earthquake weapons work. A lot of people think it's just HAARP. It's actually using harmonic discharges of energy from the upper atmosphere that releases the tectonic plates by pumping enough energy to cause the resistance between the rock faces to drop to zero temporarily. That's how they work.
Well, what I'd like to do, and we probably don't have time to finish it on this show, but sit down and write a list of the dates, and I've got, like I said, I don't have my notes with me right here, but the next time we'll talk about this, we'll talk about specific dates, specific types of events that could happen.
Give us a couple of vague ideas, just from memory, as to which dates you see coming, or months when you expect certain events.
The Mars event will be next September, starting around the 15th of September to the 1st of October, and then possibly extending beyond that. As far as Earth is concerned, the November interaction where this comet is going to interact with Mercury, a direct electrical alignment right up behind Mercury. We could, in fact, see Mercury going comet at that point. That's a term that I use to indicate that the planet Mercury could turn into a comet, discharging the solar capacitor. So these are events. I'm told that Comet ISON is already sporting a sunward spike, but of course NASA is covering it up by saying that this is a jet.
Yeah, but in other words, you're talking about a plasma jet coming off the forward surface pointing toward the sun.
Uh-huh.
Written law, California law, United States federal law, NRC to enforce. By law, have to have somewhere to put the spent fuel rods. They promised us they would have. Then 1991, it's 2013, you still storm on site.